Welcome to Tiny Box Dialogues. Joining us today is Helga Trullenberg. She is a professional working in IT projects as an expert in ERP and CRM software as a project manager. But we are bringing her here today to talk about the human aspect of change. Leveraging her skills as a psychologist, she has guided companies on how to bring people along on major change projects. She loves working on cultural projects, especially music projects, and that brings us to the topic today and at hand. How can businesses learn from the best musicians in the world? Be prepared for quite the journey into this topic. First of all, though, as my co-moderator Laura would say, we build trust by sharing our backstory.
I love this backstory.
Helga, your backstory.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you both of you, Raj and Laura, for this warm welcome. I like to participate today, and I also like to welcome all participating in the webinar today. So thank you for this. Yes, Raj, you are really right. It was a journey in my life and ended up where I'm now. I started as a psychologist who worked with massives of data, so big data today. And this leads me to the mail order and e-commerce industry, where I learned IT projects and IT projects' most important success factors, which really rely on communication and leadership. So this close loop to psychology again. And therefore, I started to work with the people. And in every big software project, it is a transformation for the company, a change project. And every transformation is about people, I learned. So I helped the organizations to transform their people. And again, it's about communication and leadership, as always, and mindset and development of an individual. And if you put the people in the middle of the transformation project, the probability of success will really increase. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned before, Raj, I very much like music, classical music, and especially early music, the music before the year of the death of Johann Sebastian Bach, which is 1750. And I very much like the comparison between music and business, and that's the reason why we are here today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a very good transition from the business and music aspect. And of course, Bach is very popular in Germany, so that doesn't surprise me that that resonates for you. Being a certified project manager myself, I know exactly what you mean. The business is always a people business, right? So I'm going to jump straight in with the best statement that I heard you say recently when we were preparing for the dialogue. And I think it rings true because it's uncannily close to business. And you said, the orchestral concert puts the audience in the middle of everything. Why don't you take a minute to explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so most of the orchestras playing to people, they want to send a message to their audience. So it's not about playing the notes in front of you like a machine. An orchestra or a musician ensemble or even a single musician wants to reach their audience. And they want to touch the people emotionally. They want to transport a message. And if you got your audience emotionally, you have an open audience with ears to your message, which it will be heard. And music can open the people if it is played with passion and with emotions. And if you strongly work on this music communication, you put your audience direct in the middle of your musical projects. And you think about where they are and who they are and what do they normally, and which music is on their smartphones and which needs they have and which mindsets towards music and different music you find in your audience. And then you try to disturb their listening habits to convince.
What does that mean? Please share your examples.
Okay, yeah. So some example, you play a concert in a shopping mall, for example, in Berlin, just instead of a concert hall. So it is done by the German Symphonic Orchestra, and they invited also some amateur musicians to participate in their performance and organized a so-called symphonic mob. 1,300 musicians.
Oh my goodness.
Amateurs, yes, and professionals together played opera and symphonic music and in one of the German's biggest spontaneous orchestras.
Oh, wow.
And, yes, and you find we will have some links to videos showing this afterwards and in LinkedIn later. So it is really amazing when you see, and you are a big part of something. You are part of a very big thing, and together with your new friends. And this is a message for the participants and also to the audience, which are also a part of this big thing. And to be a part of music gives you those goosebumps you have when something really touches you emotionally.
I usually get goosebumps from being cold, but I love it when music touches you. Goosebumps as well. I think that you said exactly the right thing there. It's about feeling connected, and employees often want to feel connected to the work they do in their projects and for their companies, right? So I can totally understand that. That makes perfect sense.
Yes, but you aren't an orchestra conductor. You're a digital transformation coach and project manager. So what is the part of project management that excites you? Can we connect that?
Yeah, it is about people. So people, of course. Projects rarely get into trouble because of technology is not right and there's something wrong in decision for special technology, especially software projects. They just get in trouble and even fail because of leadership and communication are poorly done. And this is people again. It's always about people. And one example to illustrate, one of my clients wanted to implement a new ERP system, which is quite the heart of the organization. So to implement a new ERP system is like you get a new heart, something like this. And it was a lonesome decision of the CEO. He just thought it was a great idea to implement this. Before some of his employees were invited to take part into the workshops. So the decision was made before you hear something from the employees. And everything was ready, everything was done. A very important user group in this organization, nobody talked to them before. They said, no, we don't want to use this software. Yes.
Uh-oh.
Yes, we will never. And we're standing there looking at
red flag.
What is this? And on this point, I was involved, and finally, we had to roll up the whole project from the beginning. Because a core group was just forgotten because lack of leadership and communication. It was quite.
We had a great example actually, and you shared it last time, I think, Laura, about one of our contacts who they were doing a customer focus group and they were sitting down at the table, and he turned to the rest of the group and said, where's the customer? Yeah. And the customer had not been invited to the table, right? This is always the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, a core user group, not to involve them in the process before an ERP, they haven't done the specifications, and you can't move forward. You've got to move way backward before you can move forward.
Yes.
And you've destroyed trust. So what are the challenges then you see in transformation projects or teams?
Yeah.
Example, is that common?
Yeah, so I always find from my experience of many transformation projects that the most important challenge is to get the people into the transformation process and to hold them along this process. And this means leadership and communication again. And is illustrated by the example I just mentioned before, this lack of communication and leadership. Yeah.
again, coming from project management in banking, buy-in. It's always, the journey is always about getting buy-in. This is where your analogy comes to life, right? It's about orchestrating effective communications, about how to succeed in teams. Really, it's about the team, right? So let's break it down. Because I love your analogy with the orchestra. So let's break it down. What is the purpose and function of the different components of a concert?
Yeah, to be honest, you find nearly every component in a concert you find in the business as well, and the other way around. So this comparison achieves a lot of perspective, what we are doing day by day in our businesses when leading projects or advising people to lead a project.
Okay, let's break it apart. So let's first look at the concert hall. What would be the equivalent of the concert hall in business?
Yeah, so the
concert hall.
Or let it just take a more general expression. It's the place of performance. It's the platform where the project starts and where the project is performed. So this platform gives the general setting to the concert. In music, we normally know the classic setting where you find the orchestra in the front of the musicians, and the audience is sitting on the other side, just looking straight directly to the orchestra. This is quite, in the history of music, this is quite a new setting in music performances. It was invented in the middle of the 19th century. And the Golden Hall in the Vienna Music Association was the first concert hall like this. Before, music was introduced into the music business, was just where the people are. It was performed in the pubs, in a church, on a playground, in castles, in town halls, wherever you find the people. The people tend to do different things while listen to the music. So the music was not in the middle. They talk together, they eat something. They go out, they went in. So music was just among them, like today's Spotify's list on your smartphone or on our smartphones.
Yeah, where we have so much music available to us.
Yeah, it was really, yes. And this also is different to today. In the history, music was there only if you play something yourself, you listen to something who plays, or you go to somebody who plays for you. So it was not all around us. It was just a very big event.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we know that to be true, especially from the pubs. We still have live music in the pubs in England. I totally love it. Then let's move on to the next component. So what about the musicians? What role do they play in the business?
Very important group in the musicians, like our employees in the business or just in the team. Many of them are real experts over years. And you never have such experts in your company like musicians are. So why do I tell this? Because it's really a great thesis. When a young man or a woman starts to study music, he or she is already trained until years on a private level since their childhood. They are already experts when they start their study of music in the music university. And some of the programmers or IT experts do like this. They start to program when they are children or just young teens, but it's very seldom to other experts in the business. Ask a normal CEO when he started to be a businessman. Not at 12 or at 6 or
no. There are some. I would argue there are some, and Sheryl Sandberg is one of those who says she'd been organizing things from a very young age.
Yeah. So the music study of bachelors normally needs 4 years, not 3 years, as most other studies. And also the master needs another 2 to 3 years, and not only 2 years or 1.5 sometimes. So most of the lessons are also individual lessons to improve the technique and interpretation of making music. This is also the difference, not a hall with 100 students or 500 students sitting there, the only one. And I personally have a lot of respect to the effort of these people made to prepare themselves to be excellent and to give us their music. We as a business people may ask ourselves whether we want to put the same effort into our business or our practices to be excellent. And do we allow, this is for the leaders, do we allow our employees also to take trainings and experience to get the next level of excellence?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an important question, especially when the music that's being played and being studied is music from possibly before 1750, and the things that need to be learned and become expert and to develop expertise in today are brand new. Maybe it didn't exist 20 years ago to study it in a program. So the trainings and experience are so vital. So, and just looking to, Rosh is letting me know there's a question from the audience, and I'll read the question to you. Oh, what about the conductor? Surely they are a central theme in making teams work.
Yeah.
Can you do without a conductor, I guess, is the question.
The conductor. This is one of the most important points for me, because I'm a fan of early music. And in early music, there was no conductor. Like we know the most famous conductors, like, for example, Sir Simon Rattle or Herbert Karajan, or just actually Christian Thielemann. Who are like heroes or just gods of music. Conductor was invented after the French Revolution, which is in the early 19th century. Before this, there was no conductor. There was only a leader. So Johann Joachim Quanz, he was the flute teacher of Frederick II of Prussia. He wrote on, I think, 50s around, his paper of, it's in German, Versuch einer Anweisung, die Flöte Traverserie zu spielen. It is very old German. And he writes an article about a leader. And he called this leader Anführer, so which is the origin of leader. He described a leader like a primus inter pares, so the first among the equals, and someone who is the part of the team, which is the orchestra or the ensemble, but has a special abilities which enable him or her to be a leader.
So it's not hierarchical like this.
No, it's not hierarchical.
And also this makes sense now why there's always a lead violinist or a lead flutist or a lead, because this is this concept, right? Of that you always have this one first among equals. I love it. That's fantastic. Yeah, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
But
it's very interesting to see what Quanz wrote about the leader and the attributes of a leader a la Quanz, as I named it. You need for today's leadership, even this is hundreds of years old. And I picked just out some of them because I found it so interesting. So Quanz said, a leader cannot produce greatness for himself. He needs a team. This sounds very simple, but
yeah, relevant.
Yes. And a leader has to have knowledge about what he wants to deal with, a lot more than a team member or an employee. And a leader in music, he has to know the music much deeper and wider as a composer, who mostly only knows his own music very deep. And the leader in business also has to know about a lot more situations and methods than his client.
It's true. And the competition.
Yeah. And a leader, Quanz wrote, is the one who gives the rhythm to the team. which is appropriate to the team members, musicians, and to the subject itself, which is the music. But he's the one who gives the rhythm to everything. And the leader isn't a soloist, so he or her can give the platform for the different specialists, the soloists, as a member of a team, but he isn't one.
Interesting.
Yeah. And a leader has to take care of everybody in the beginning of the project, and everybody is attuned. So also in the ensemble or in the orchestra, otherwise you just end up in a disharmonic performance. Nobody wants to hear this.
It just ends up being noise.
Yeah.
That is such a good analogy. The alignment there with the teams. I really like that. Thank you. Yeah.
And finally, the leader has to play with other musicians a wide spread of music to reach the audience and to get the emotions, which is the aim of playing music. So he has to know a lot of music and who has to improve his team members, the musicians, playing with them a wide range. And all these advices talk about people. So Quantz talks about people and how to reach people. Nevertheless, it is the team, the musicians, or the audience, who are the customer.
We just, it's interesting, Helga, we just had recently Birgit, who spoke to us about vision and leadership. And that's very much what you're talking about here, where do you connect with people? Do you pull them along on your journey to reach the vision? And how do you inspire them to do that? And one of my leaders for the banking in Canada, everybody believed in him because he gave everybody autonomy, asked them for their expertise on the table, but then made final decisions very confidently. They call him, HBR calls it level 5 leadership, because it's really inspirational and aspirational. So I love that. That's fantastic. But we are missing a core component, aren't we, Laura?
Yes, yes. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of things that sound similar to jazz and innovation in some of these connections I've made before in my work with how to innovate with all of these experts. But so let's actually talk about the music.
Yeah,
what about the music itself?
Also a very important component, the music, because the music is the communication. So early music in particular was composed to evoke feelings in the audience. It was very new in the early music to evoke the feelings of the audience. The audience should react with emotions. That was the intention of the composers and the texters at that time. This was everything before 750 around. And it was a very customer-centric way of talking to the people, of composing music and perform music. The music of the 19th century, the opposite, and up to the contemporary music we now have, is often puts the composer, the conductor, or a soloist into the center of the project. And this is the concept of the musical genius. So there's always a genius who is put in the middle of everything. That's why we have so few non-attenders at concert compared to their potential. So only 12% of the population go into concerts in a concert hall. The really potential is about 80% of the population. But yeah, they do not go because of so many barriers which prevent them from the music to do their basic job, to communicate with the audience. To talk about the barriers is an extra session.
Fair enough.
I sense some opinions and some data points there.
Yeah, it's really a very interesting field of research. Non-attenders of concerts. It's an extra session.
Okay. But that's good to know. I mean, it is interesting, especially because everybody loves music. So there's clearly barriers in place that are preventing them to go see live music.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so the business component of that?
So today we want to work in teams, and we want also to have leaders or to be leaders, and we don't want to be bosses or to have bosses, most of us. So we want to understand the purpose of the project or the purpose of the company, and we want to give the message to our audience. And this we can learn also when we follow early music and the performances of early music in the historical settings. So that they played the music like it was intended by the composer. And I also add some videos where you can just watch the communication within the ensemble or the little orchestra, and you see how also the conductor, the leader, is the primus inter pares. So there were some examples afterwards.
Thank you for sharing those. I am going to pay attention to the time because we've only got 4 minutes left, and I just want to come back.
4 minutes.
Yeah. We've had a great conversation. We're hearing so much interesting historical data. But coming back to this, audience is at the center of the whole orchestra. I mean, one of the things that we used to do in corporate, one of the companies I worked for, they always said a disappointed customer was just an opportunity to exceed expectations. And I love that you put the audience at the center, just as we would put customers at the center. So I want to give you a chance to share your final ideas. I think Laura has a question for you, and then we're going to wrap it up. So please, Laura.
Right. So the question I have is, if we have this analogy to music, what kinds of leaders are we wanting leaders to be today? You said for leaders that for modern projects today, and how can they really help their teams succeed with this analogy music in mind? Can you give an example?
Yeah, the example is, for example, I made some seminars when we with a singer, and we're singing together in teams and use singing for team building. And from this experience, and also from the experience of doing more music projects and software projects, I have some learnings from this. So very important is to promote a shared and common understanding of what is to be achieved or to be communicated externally to the audience. Mm-hmm. And then leave the task to the team, which works with passion, with your guidance, but it works on itself. And avoid detailed instructions. This kill creativity and problem-solving skills.
They call that micromanagement.
They're just, yes, management by little things.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And a second one is to provide the soloists in your team and to give them a platform to present their excellent expertise. Mm-hmm. And this, and give those who are not the super performer the ability to train and to learn. Mm-hmm. So to train and to learn themselves. And the third is, as a leader, be attentive and keep your attention on both, on the team members and on the audience, and never stop waiting to learn. So wanting to learn. So it is really important that you always learn about people and always learn further on, further on. So I'm a psychologist and a coach by training, and my final wrap up motto is, it's always about people. And so
fantastic. Thank you. There's so many insights for our audience, and I'm so grateful to have you here. So there you have it. Remember, if you work strongly on music communication, you put your audience directly in the middle of your musical projects. Do the same in business. Next week, so I got to wrap up because we're just out of time, but next week we talk about how you can increase customer retention, so customer centricity in 5 steps. So this is a perfect continuation of this topic.
Brilliant.
And we're also diving into Bitcoin on Friday, 3-part series. So if you have any curiosity about Bitcoin, do join us. Thanks for joining. Helga and Laura. This video was shared on YouTube and the audio on Spotify, and a lot of the podcasts and music that Helga mentioned will be listed below the video. Thanks for joining us and have a great week. Bye.
Bye-bye.